Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Legacy Speaks podcast. I am super excited for this conversation. Today, we're going to talk with another fellow creative, another fellow storyteller, and her name is Miss Alexandria Reed, and she is all things Gladiate beautifully. And we're going to talk a little bit about her brand and what that looks like. And so, Alexandria, can you please let the people know who you are, what you do, and what is your favorite thing about life?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank y'all so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and I'm grateful and I don't take the honor lightly. So thank you so much for asking me to be here today. Guys, Gladiate beautifully. Well, I'm Alex first. I guess that's what's important. Yes, Alexandria, but I always feel like it's such a mouthful. So Alex is totally fine. But I am the founder and CEO of Gladiate Beautifully. We are a women's empowerment multimedia company. So when I say multimedia, everyone's like, what does that mean? And multimedia for me is we basically have the ability and the intention to inspire through different forms of media. So for us, that's our podcast. For us, that's in-person events. That's a medium and a media for us to engage our social media, of course, our Instagram. And then we have a community that exists within like Facebook. And we are so grateful for that. And that whole community is really about womanhood and every aspect. Like, I feel like there's so many communities that have this emphasis on like female entrepreneurship or women entrepreneurship or just motherhood or just like being, allowed women to show up as they are and not necessarily allow them, but expect them to show up as they are. And that's something that's really, really important to me. So that's kind of where that came from, and really creating a community of people that are expected to show up how they are. They're expected to show up authentically. So that is my baby. That is my love. We have the podcast, like I said, and then we do an annual conference. We did our first annual conference in October. And then this year we're doing it again. And it starts September 30th through October 2nd. And it's more of a retreat style this year that we're really, really excited about, just bringing, a room full of women together to feel empowered to empower each other. So that is kind of my love, my passion, and really inspiring people to share their stories and connect through that. In addition to that, I also am a realtor in the Denver metro area, and I love that. And honestly, it is what allows me to show up the way that I want to show up in life. So real estate allows me to show up as a gladiator within Gladiate Beautifully. And I am a mama of two little vivacious little beings. My little girls are my light. And I am a wife. I am a friend. I am a storyteller. I am a taco connoisseur. Yes. I love greens mixed with my sweet potatoes, mixed with hot water cornbread. And that is who I am.
Oh, thank you so much for all of that. Because, typically when people do their introductions, they're super professional and they're like, oh, I do this, I do that. This is my brand and that's it. And I love the fact that you literally took us on a journey, not only with what you do, but who you are, the life roles that you operate in, your passions, the things that drive you every day. And so thank you so much for providing that, especially modeling that, so to speak, especially for the community of women that you cater to. And so that is so important. And the emphasis that you have on making sure that women show up authentically for themselves and for other people, because, society has a way of trying to suppress that aspect of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely. And so I do want to dive into your passion for telling stories. I find that people have a tendency of finding their passion, their drive based upon their own personal experiences. And so what led you to get into the female empowerment space? How did you become the person that you are today for other people?
Oh, that's such a loaded question for me. I feel like, like my storytelling really goes back to like connection. I think growing up, I never felt like I fit in, but I always would, it's such an interesting, like thing to say, because I'm a firm believer of like that these two things that appear to be polar opposites can exist simultaneously. So for me, I had this mindset that I didn't fit in, but at the same time, I knew how to connect with people, like through these little things, you know, through whether it be like, oh my gosh, I love sweet tea, and like being able to start from there and the story that is behind the story of sweet tea for me, and then being able to connect that with somebody else. But as far as what led me to really walk in this space, I would say, I think it really started outside of that growing up. It started with my faith. And I had a really dark season in my life where I literally wanted to commit suicide. I was done. This was like what, 2017 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was done. I was absolutely done. I was working in administration for a church that I loved. Don't get me like loved, but like I wasn't well. Like I just wasn't well, you know. And I don't know if you've ever heard the expression that you lead while you bleed. I was in leadership and administration of this organization, and there's so much of that storytelling, you know, like there's so much of that, but I did not have the ability to really separate the weight that I carried for other people, because I have such a heart for people, and I am very empathetic to a fault, I think sometimes, because I take on a lot of that. And so it kind of started there. And then once I got past that, like really like depressive episode, and I was like, you know what, like I got past this. I felt like God had really challenged me to share my testimony. You know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the scripture, you know, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, right? Yep. So that kept sticking out to me, and I was like, all right, so cool, I'll share my testimony, God. Like, I got you. I'll tell people what you did for me. Like, you brought me out of this. I got it, right? So I did that, and I kept hearing this pull of like, Alex, like, you shared your testimony with all these people that already know that I love them, with all these people that already know, you know, that like that I am their savior, that I can redeem all things. Like those people already know, right? So I was like, okay, so like, all right, well, I did what you said, so move on, you know? And something just kept pulling at me. And then finally I decided to record my testimony in a video format. I don't even know how it came up, to be honest. It was just like, that's what I'm supposed to do. So I just did it. And that whole idea of leading while bleeding really translates into Gladiate beautifully for me. So it is this idea of, you know, this being, excuse my French, badass, being strong, being courageous, being authentic, and being empowered to be that, but still being able to do that with grace. And I even mirror that with like masculine energy and like this feminine energy of like, you know, like those double standards, that if a woman is too aggressive or assertive, then she's a B, you know? And I'm like, I can be aggressive and assertive, but I can do this with grace, to where like, I don't care that that's what you think, but this is who I am, and this is how I'm showing up, you know? And so it kind of started there with, it started there with Gladiate beautifully, is that connection there. And then it just morphed into everything that it is. People needed a space to show up as they were. They needed a space and a platform to be able to share their stories. And I wanted to be able to provide that, because sharing my story is what really set me free from what was really, I feel like, holding me back, which also then I don't want to jump ahead of myself here on this, but that also, while I am so grateful for God, and I know Jesus is my Lord and Savior, absolutely. At the same time, I really believe that God gave me the space and grace to also deconstruct my faith, which for some people that doesn't make sense. Like, well, you just said God saved you, but then now like you're talking about how you deconstructed Christianity for yourself. I did, but I really believe God gave me the space and grace to do that. But I want to give people the space and the grace to show up as themselves, and that's what Gladiate beautifully really was birthed out of. I know that sounds like a really complex story, but that's the truth.
No, yeah, there's nothing complex about that. I appreciated your explanation, because even when I think about the term gladiate or even gladiator, I'm like, Man, there's two different perspectives. Either the individual is preparing to go into battle, or the other individual has already won the battle. They're victorious.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that there are a number of people who are on those two different spectrums, or they're currently in battle. So three different perspectives right then and there. And so reminding individuals that even as you are like preparing for something, in the midst of a thing or leaving a thing, you can do it gracefully, you can do it beautifully, you can do it messy. You can do it like overwhelmed. You can do all of it and still be able to come on the other side of it, and also help utilize your story to train people who are going into the battle after you. So I really love that.
You see me, no, seriously, like people think that those like two different things can't exist at the same time. You can be overwhelmed and graceful at the same time. That is okay. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, it's okay for these two things to be like to coexist. You could be angry and resentful at a situation, but still be happy for somebody else. I'll use that example for like fertility, for instance. Like, I had a fertility, like it was really difficult for me to get pregnant with my second child. And I was so upset and so angry and like resentful that it was so easy for some women to conceive, right? But at the same time, like I have my best friend that conceived. I could still be angry and upset and frustrated and resentful at my own body, but still be happy and so excited for my best friend who was pregnant. And people don't think that you can be both, but you totally can. It's okay to be both.
Definitely. This year has been a whirlwind, hasn't it? And I'm pretty sure that you and your business have had to make a number of changes as a result of the pandemic. But I need you to get really present right now. Let's tap into the here and now in this very moment. When was the last time you truly checked in on your team? As a matter of fact, when was the last time that you truly thought about how you and your team are mentally and emotionally navigating through all of the adjustments that are taking place? But guess what? I'm here to help with that. Hi, my name is Sierra Hillsman, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and certified clinical trauma professional. I work with small businesses and corporations by helping their teams explore their presenting concerns. That way we can increase employee engagement and improve productivity overall. This can be done through in-person or online lunch and learn events, corporate workshops, and organizational seminars. Click the link below. That way you can start to learn how to truly invest in the overall mental and emotional wellness of your team. Thank you for bringing that up, reminding people that they can do both. When I talk to clients and they find themselves feeling like these mixed emotions, I always remind them that it's okay to live in the both and. You can be both overwhelmed and still excited. You can be both depressed and also feel elated about a situation. You can find a lesson in a situation, but also be in the midst of hurting. And so granting permission to be able to have that very real human experience. I think we have a way of trying to pick either this or that, or operate in the black and white. And that restriction doesn't allow us to be able to be vulnerable, to sit with those emotions. You don't have to pick one over the other. You can just literally, like we talked about, authentically feel those emotions and trust yourself with those emotions too.
Yeah, and like, who said we had to pick? Like, where did we get that idea from that we had to pick one or the other? Like, where did that even come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't understand that for the life of me.
Yeah. Typically it's survival. I know when I work with some clients and they only allow themselves to feel one particular emotion, it's because of a warped way of looking at the weaker emotion. And I like to use air quotes because there's no such thing as a bad feeling or a bad emotion. Every single emotion has its place. Fear has its place, anger has its place, excitement has its place, anxiety has its place. It's just learning how to work through those things.
100%.
Definitely. Yes. And one thing that I really would like to hone in on, going back to the transparency that you utilize. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey in terms of like mental health, especially within the church space, because I know a number of people might have had experience with church hurt. And so
girl, don't even get me started.
And so, as you reflect on that experience, how have you been able to take care of yourself emotionally and mentally since then?
Honestly, it's more of a, I feel like, an understanding that I have with myself now
Mm-hmm.
of because like I said, I deconstructed my faith a lot. I really had to, like, if you want to get biblical, like Jacob wrestled with God, right?
Yeah.
Jacob wrestled with God. So I had to love myself and accept the fact that, like, hey, like, God has given me the grace to wrestle with this, to figure out, like, to ask questions, and I grew up in church. So, like, growing up in church, I feel like Christianity, and I may be speaking too loosely, I don't mean in a disrespect at all, but I think growing up in church, there is this, like, need to be told what is right and what is wrong.
Mm.
There is this need to be like, well, this is how you do it. Like, it's like almost more regimented. I think Christianity can be very regimented and, like, well, I serve in the church and I do this. And I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm not saying that, but there was no relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I feel like I have a relationship, and my relationship had to exist with God, had to exist outside of the confines of church. I had to figure that out. And so I completely, real talk, stopped going to church because I was like, I don't understand. And now I'm at a place just recently where I feel like I can listen to, like, messages and, like, sermons again, because I feel like I have the ability. I don't need to be told what's right and what's wrong. I feel like I have the ability, and I take care of myself by knowing that it's okay to take what I need from, like, a message and
Mm-hmm.
spit out what I don't, or what I don't need, or what I don't agree with. Because there's some, like, fundamental things for me that I just don't. I think the Christian body, like, sometimes, or the church body, can make these really bold statements. Like, even if you, I don't want to get in trouble on your
It's
podcast.
okay. Go ahead.
But I feel like Christianity can, and the church body can make these really bold statements about, like, one, like, we'll say homosexuality, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
or, like, they make this really bold statement about, can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Okay.
I hear you. Yep.
This really bold statements about, like, homosexuality, but I'm like, then show me. The Bible says, show me where it says explicitly this. And then I really, like, I have a hard time with that, because I'm like, okay, while, as we know, the Bible is a lot of stories and a lot of parables, right? So what about the common baseline and, like, the character traits that are of Jesus, right? Are to love people. So, like that's what it's about, is loving people, right? So you mean to tell me that you tell me in this one space that his love is unconditional, right? You tell me his love is unconditional. I believe that. But it's like, oh, it's unconditional with the exception of these conditions.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult for me. And then once I realized, and I really I feel like I had more of a relationship with God instead of a regimented, like, experience with God. It allowed me to, he gave me, again, that space and that grace to be like, all right, babe, like, you got it. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I love you. And there's nothing you can do to change that. There's nothing that, you know what I mean? And I feel like the church puts conditions on the love that is supposed to be unconditional.
Definitely.
Not every church, but I feel like it's very common in just, evangelical Christianity.
Yes, I definitely agree. Every time there is something that goes on in the news about some pastor or minister or things of that nature, I always have to remind people that at the end of the day, these people are human beings.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to establish a relationship with that particular person, work to establish the relationship with the God of your understanding. And
Girl, you better preach.
And that's way more important, especially when you're thinking about Jesus Christ as, like, our savior. If you're gonna be a believer in all aspects of Jesus Christ, not just the person who served as the atonement for our sins, but the person who also kicked it with the tax collector, the person who is also turning over tables, like, believe all aspects of Christ,
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And so
I love that. And I think as society, even those that aren't believers, I feel like society places this like infallibility on religious leaders that it's so unhealthy. Like you don't give them the space to be human. For them, you know what I mean? Like they're not infallible. Like they're not always right. That's just not the way it is. And I think that's also our problem too, though, not just religious leaders. Like that's the problem of us as consumers, period, as human beings, that we place this level of responsibility on our spiritual and religious leaders to be completely infallible. And that's not acceptable, which is why, yeah, that one of the highest rates of suicide is in what? Pastors. Because we place them on this pedestal that they cannot live up to, but that they weren't meant to live up to that either.
Yeah. I think it's just leaders in general, right? Wanting to have some sense of direction. And we saw that with the children of Israel when Moses went up to the mountain and I believe it was Aaron was still down there with them, and they forced Aaron to make a golden calf, right? I think it's just human nature for us to have something to like see or believe in because we're struggling with faith within ourselves. So we're always looking to other things outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to tie that back into just becoming more confident in who you are as a person, because with Gladiate Beautifully and the conference and the podcast and all the things that you guys do, ultimately you're teaching individuals to be confident in not only who they are, but whose they are as well. And so can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. So it's such a great segue. You're just incredible. But but yes, absolutely. But that's again, like I said in the beginning, it's expected. And that's what that community is for. You know, like that community is for a woman to be able to question, a woman to be able to be around people that are women that are going to lift them back up, women that are going to let them know it's okay to question things, let them own it, and let them know it's okay to be a certain way. And I think so often, especially as you transition into like adulthood, you know, I think adult friendships can be very difficult, and especially acquiring new friends as an adult and as a woman. So I think that Gladiate Beautifully really just, we try to create that space. That's it. And especially for, I'm going to get on my high horse for like 2 seconds, but I won't be on it long. Especially for Black, Indigenous people of color. I feel like there isn't a space where I feel like that diversity is appreciated or that diversity isn't tokenized. I feel like sometimes I personally have been a part of like, whether it be like, you know, entrepreneurship groups, those things like that, you know, where I feel like my presence was like tokenship, you know, and I don't want that for Gladiate Beautifully. Like, girl, be Black, brown, yellow, I don't care. But I do really place an emphasis on the amplification of like Black voices or Indigenous voices, people of color, all of that. I try to place emphasis on that. But again, it's just that whole journey is just to take space and grace for those folks to show up as they want to, without condemnation, without judgment, without fear of acceptance. Because like, again, it's a space that doesn't tell you, I don't want to sit there and be like, I just want to show you how to be authentic. I want to know. You don't need to be shown, just show up.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel like Gladiate Beautifully has grown, is again, people are expected to show up as they are. But if you cuss like a sailor and you know, also do ballet, girl, show up. You know what I mean? If you know, you're a rabbi that likes to break dance, let's do it, girl. Like, I don't care. Just show up as you are so that we can love you as you are. And we want you to, that empowerment isn't, I feel like our empowerment is authentic because of the expectation that says the expectation is for you to be you. And that is it.
Yeah. That line right there really resonated with me. Show up as you are so that we can love you as you are. And I feel like that's so important, especially during the times that we're currently living, where it's like vaccine versus non-vaccinated, believer or atheist, or Republican versus Democrat. it's just a lot of division. And so even in the midst of all of these things that have a tendency to separate us, I always like to remind people that we are a part of a huge tapestry. Life would be so boring if all of us woke up and we were the same across the board. And I really appreciate the space that you create, because there's so much growth in community. If we were all walking around the same way, we wouldn't be able to learn about each other, and we wouldn't be able to learn about ourselves in relation to other people too.
Yep. I agree 1,000%. That's what it's about though. But you wouldn't be able to establish that community either if you don't share your story either. Mm-hmm. That's literally how we connect as humans, is through storytelling. I don't care what anyone says, but that's how we connect. That's how we are able to form bonds. That's how we are able to feel like that kinship or that safety in spaces, is through telling your story.
Definitely.
That's what being held and being kept is, so
yeah.
Oh, girl.
Definitely. And when you tell your story, people have a way of creating a home in your story. They can see themselves in your story. And so since you're in the real estate space, how do you combine storytelling with real estate?
That is a stellar question. I feel like depending on the buy and the list side, I feel like every day is a story. And I feel like I take it as an honor to be able to be a part of the story. So it's not that I'm like, I'm doing this service for you. It's really like servitude. Like, I get to serve your family in this season of life. I get to serve you in this time of your life. I get to do that. And I think that's a part of the stories. I get to be a part of their story, which then again, that talk about that tapestry you just said, like, I get to be interwoven in their story. And I love that. And I think, one, I've gotten business through Gladiate beautifully unintentionally because of that storytelling. And so I try to make it to where I am a part of your story and not writing your story. And I think that's for my buyers, for my sellers, for my investors, all of it. It's just, I'm a part of your story. So for instance, I have an investor who happens to be a man of color. He's a Black man. And the pride I get in serving him is just like, it blows my mind. I just get I'm grateful because I get to be a part of him making generational wealth as a Black man. And to me, that is a story in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. Love it. And I do want to take some time to ask some questions, because I know the market has been crazy, and I'm pretty sure somebody, their ears are ringing right now. They're like, oh, real estate investing. Oh my gosh, what do I need to know? So I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what are some tips that you have for first-time home buyers or individuals who are looking to add real estate or are purchasing a home or purchasing like commercial, whatever the case may be, as a part of their story?
Absolutely. And real estate is such a phenomenal avenue to build wealth. And I feel like people are very scared of it sometimes, unfortunately. So my first advice would be, honestly, reach out to a realtor. Honestly, like, and I don't say that for any other reason, but having somebody in your corner that can then connect you with the right type of lender, because that's what you need to do. People are also so scared of running their credit, and you don't want to just be out here willy-nilly just running it. Don't get me wrong, but you have to know where you're at in order to be put on the path to get where you want to go. And that really starts with that really starts with running your credit, getting a full workup with a good lender. That's where that starts, because people think like, oh, well, I don't have like 50 grand saved, or I don't have, like, girl, there's so many programs out there that allow you to get into home ownership, whether that be from an investment side or from a like it being your primary residence, so your own personal use. There's so many different ways. So I would say connect with the realtor and ask for lender recommendations, depending on whether you're wanting to go into investments or residential for your own primary residence, or commercial. Have them refer you to a lender that gets that ball rolling, so they can tell you what you need to do. Because you sitting here being like, yeah, I want to get into real estate. Well, then do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Then you need to ask the right questions. You need to you need to be able to see where you're at and where you need to go. So I would say definitely start there. And for people that are that are listening to this too, reach out to me. Like, I am happy to always answer a question. And yes, I serve Denver, but I also have agents across the nation that I could always link you up with. And then I have lenders that serve people nationwide. So like, just ask. You can slide into my DMs. I won't think it's weird. It's okay. You can slide them.
Absolutely love it. Okay, Alex, well, thank you so much for all of this wealth of information. I do want to double back and talk about your gladiatorship a little bit more, because we talked about the importance of community and creating spaces for individuals to be their full authentic self. And I know a lot of people, they may go to the conference and they're kind of like, well, what's next? Or how do I prepare for the conference? Can you shed a little bit more light on your gladiatorship?
Yes, Gladiatorship is a free membership. And it is just facilitated on Facebook. So follow us on Instagram as always. We're always posting about it. We're at Gladiate Beautifully. But it is a community on Facebook. And every single month we have themed months that really focus again on womanhood at large. So for instance, January was Confidently Healthy, where we talked about not only like physical health, but mental health, but then also even down to like our relationship with food. And mindsets around food. So we did that. And then like February, for instance, is financial feminism, where we're going to be talking about mortgages. We're going to be talking about budgeting and investing, things like that. But I wanted to make that free because that information is out there. So I find the experts and vet them and put them in front of you. So all you need to do is spend 30 minutes on a Thursday night, and that's going to up level your life in ways that you may not know you needed. And so my first thing was just getting plugged in with us in that community, whether it be prepping for the conference or trying to figure out what's next after the conference. Being a part of that community allows you to live that out every single week, for you to connect with people from around, the world, or I won't say world, but around the nation, and build and find community within that. Like, I even love to see like the ones that are entrepreneurs, small business owners, them doing business with each other. It is the coolest thing to see, because it's become also like this incredible referral network, even professionally.
Love it. And y'all, please make sure that you're tapping in. I know we talked a lot about the importance of community, but community only works when you participate in it and you show up with the mindset of serving. So not just going in to promote your brand or to show off what you can do, but to genuinely connect, because connections go a very long way. So please make sure that you're following at Gladiate Beautifully, and even tapping in at gladiatebeautifully.co as soon as possible. Alex, I always like to end my interviews with this one particular question. I know the podcast is called Legacy Speaks. And so what would you like your legacy to say about you?
That is an incredible question. And I feel like I have like 2 or 3 things that I'm like, I want my legacy. I want my legacy to be, oh my gosh, be interested, not interesting.
Ooh.
That's what I want it to be. I want be interested, not interesting. Don't focus on being interesting. Don't focus on talking about yourself all the time. Like, be interested. That's it. That's my legacy.
Oh, yes. I like that.
Not interesting. That's it.
Very straightforward and so impactful at the same time. Alex, thank you so much once again for your time, your expertise. Thank you for letting us in on your journey, your vulnerability and transparency throughout this particular episode. And so, as always, please make sure that you guys connect with Alex at Gladiate Beautifully via Instagram as well as Facebook. And then you can also find her at her website, gladiatebeautifully.co. Please make sure that you register for the Gladiate Beautifully conference that's happening in September. And also, don't forget to sign up for her gladiatorship as well. And once again, my name is Sierra Hillsman, licensed professional counselor, and this is the Legacy Speaks podcast. Please don't forget to stay connected via Legacy SPKS on everything. Until next time.